Hey everybody, this is Sean, your local dietitian out of Atlanta, Georgia. We are going to be finishing off our pre-activity or pre-competition fueling today. We talked about how to fuel 3 to 4 hours before training, 1 to 2 hours before training, and then we're going to talk about how to top it off less than 30 minutes before your training time. So if you miss any of those other previous videos, definitely go back and take a look to see, basically how to fuel as we're leading up closer to that competition time. Now, a couple of things that I note in those first two videos is the first and foremost thing you need to know is your schedule, right? When is your game? When is your practice? When is your lift? Because that's going to directly determine where you need to start on this timeline when it comes to fueling, right? So let's say in the morning time, you have to train at 9 o'clock. All right. Are you going to get up at 6 a.m. and get a full breakfast in? Have you ever gotten up at 6 a.m. to get a breakfast in? Can you handle food that early in the morning? Then possibly a full meal might not be the best choice for you. You might have to have a big snack the night before, and then you might have to have a snack, 1 to 2 hours before your training time, and then you might have to get a bigger meal after your training time. So this isn't the perfect timeline. It's ideal. It's in the best case scenario, you can do this, but just know at any point, this timeline you may have to curtail based off of when your specific training time is. Obviously, if your game is at 1 o'clock or you have a game at 7 o'clock, right, this timeline will line up very well. But a lot of times, if your game is in the morning at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, or if you have multiple events during the day, let's say you play tennis, right, and you have 2 to 3 matches, you may not be able to get a full meal in during those match times, because maybe a match you get an hour off, match you get an hour off, match you get an hour off, and then maybe it's more grazing and snacking to refuel, recover than it is a big meal. And you might not be able to get a big meal until your matches are over, just because you don't want to risk it. Now, this less than 30 minutes mark, right? So this is where it's almost match time. We definitely really want to limit or avoid anything that's high in fiber, whole grains, because whole grains are going to have more fiber, more protein, more fats, protein, and just fats in general, right? We want to avoid any type of gastrointestinal issue that may mentally or physically feel distressed or symptoms, right? Because if that's affecting our mental, if that's affecting our physical, then like this picture, right? If we're going out on the pitch and I have to go play a soccer game in 30 minutes, but my stomach is killing me and I feel like I'm going to get nauseous, I'm not thinking about the objective and what I have to do now going out in the pitch. I'm thinking about, oh, I don't feel great. And now physically, if I don't feel great, that's going to affect me mentally. And you're like, oh, I can't really push it 100% how I want to. Now, again, like we talked in the last video, some of that is mental up here, right? You're getting nervous, you're getting anxious, you're getting overly excited at times. And that's where you might have to work with a mental conditioning coach or a sports psychologist. So when you get into those specific moments and you feel like that, you have the tools to help keep yourself calm, whether it's breathing, whether it's visualization, whether it's meditating, whether it's positive affirmations, right? There's lots of different things you could do in those moments. There's a podcast episode I'm going to put out where they'll do cold bathtubs on practice training days. And that way they're uncomfortable during that time. And then they do visualization while they're in that uncomfortable moment. So then when they get to the game, it's like they already play the moment through their head and it becomes a lot easier. So lots of different avenues you can take, but if that's the issue mentally, you're having trouble there, I would highly recommend seeking out one of those professionals. But back to the nutrition, right? So we really want to, if you think about your body as a car, right? We've talked about that with fuel and energy with carbohydrates. Basically this less than 30 minutes is to top off that fuel gauge, to put ourselves in a position where our energy is all the way over on the F and we're full and ready to go. Not full and ready to go where we're having GI issues or we didn't pound 16 ounces of water right before we went out onto the field or the pitch or the court, right? It's, do I take a couple sips of Gatorade and water, right? Do I have a half a banana? Do I have a half of a chewy bar? Do I have a honey stinger, right? Something that's going to be really fast and easy to digest. Something's going to top your energy stores off. And that way you're hopefully feeling as close to 100% energy-wise, mentally and physically, as you're going into whatever the activity, competition, or game may specifically be, right? Fluid-wise, we talked about in some of our hydration discussions. If your pee is a very pale light yellow or light like lemonade, not 100% clear and not obviously dark like apple juice, right? Those are just feedback mechanisms to tell you that you did a great job leading up to competition and you should be good. But when we go to talk about how to fuel during games, that's where we're going to have a discussion on. Obviously, our energy level can't stay 100% for 2-3 hours straight, and we'll get into that more. But the next slide here is going to be just some really quick examples. All right, we talked about during hydration, you don't want to chug your fluids, right? You want to sip on your fluids. It hits your stomach a lot easier. It's easier for your body to handle, right? If you were to chug down against 16 ounces of water, it might feel like it's sloshy. You might get really nauseous, because if you're going from, 0 to 100, walking to now having to go sprint on the field, and you just chugged or ate a whole bunch of food or a large volume of fluid or food, that might not feel the most comfortable, and that may result in you feeling nauseous or sick or throwing up, which we don't want to do. All right, so you can see I put the Gatorade cups, which everyone's probably really used to during game day. I put obviously the smaller bottles of Gatorade, which maybe only 12 ounces, and maybe you sip on 4 to 8 ounces leading up to the game. And that's how you kind of top things off. And then you can see I have lots of examples here, right? Especially fruit, dried fruits, fruit cups, go-go squeeze, squeezable fruits, fresh fruits, crackers, pretzels, bars. Again, things that are going to have carbs, things that are going to have fluids, and things that are going to have specifically salt. Because when you're sweating during a game, one of the key electrolytes you're going to lose is salt. The salt also helps with that rapid rehydration. Where salt goes, water goes. Where water goes, carbohydrate's going to go. So remember, carbohydrate works with that water to then we can get fluids, we can get electrolytes, and we can get obviously energy and fuel into your muscle cells, so we can have that continued energy source. Hope that provided some really easy examples that you could utilize leading up to that point. Now, again, some athletes, they eat the meal 3 to 4 hours before, they eat the snack 1 to 2 hours before. And some athletes are like, hey, I feel great. I don't really need that snack 30 minutes before. And that's just kind of the decision for the athlete. So you present it, make it available. They choose to use it or they don't choose to use it. It's up to them. But if they are having, low energy levels, that's where you got to work backwards and figure out, why is it happening? Did they not eat, if it's a 7 o'clock game, did they not eat lunch and breakfast? Or do they only eat lunch, had no snacks and no breakfast, right? So if their body language is telling you one thing, if they're telling you another thing, if they're going over to the table and they're just like grabbing all the snacks because they're saying I'm starving, right? That's some follow-up question. That's some actions that you can follow up on with questions to see why that may be happening and where they may have not done the best of job leading up to that point, to provide them the best success to fuel once that practice lift or competition is going to start. If you want to learn more about sports nutrition, if you want to learn how to cook, exercise technique, information about strength and conditioning, or you want to listen to my Roots podcast, which has a variety of sports medicine and high performance staff on it, you can hit up my Linktree link in my bio, or you can go to my Instagram under overtime_Sean, and all my digital links are in my bio there as well. Hope you guys learned something today. And if there's anything you want to learn, don't be afraid to leave a comment or DM me on IG. Hope you guys have an awesome day.